and to also the region.
We do have, as Africa, abundant renewable resources. When you look at solar energy, hydro, gas as a transition energy, if you look at the just transition, that is an opportunity that we certainly need to harness. We also do need to harness the demographic dividend. And here, what we need to do is make sure that we're leveraging and using the young or youthful population that we have in terms of innovation, around green economy and investments and so on, an opportunity that we haven't seen the dividend yet. But the fact that we do have, and if you look at a lot of innovations across in Africa, they're actually coming from this population group.
If we are to adopt the emerging technologies that we're talking about, for instance, green hydrogen, then it's very important to improve electrification on the continent. Science and technology and innovation are key if we are to transform Africa's economy to an inclusive and green one.
If we mobilize the resources that we are talking about, if they are not used very well, if they are not prioritized in order to maximize the gain that can be drawn out of them, then we are not achieving what we want to achieve. I think that this kind of forum is also the place where we hear from everybody from the continent, and where we can then learn about country case studies. And it is then important for countries to share their information, to allow ECA to dig more and to have more information and be in a position to advise other countries. This is how we can go towards building a credible carbon market for the region, because only one country doing it will not enable Africa actually to develop that regional carbon market.
We're excited to be able to join this Conference of Ministers this year. It touches on a number of really poignant points that relate to the development of the continent. What's of specific interest to me, as well as the institution that I work with, is the conversation on the reform of the global financial architecture. As TJNA, we've been following the discussion on the reform of the global tax system specifically, and we feel that the role that UNECA can play to support the charge that the Africa Group is leading in New York is a really important conversation that all of us need to get behind. And so I'm really excited to see what comes out of those conversations as Africa is leading the discussion on the reform of the global tax system.
This event of this magnitude happening in our country, I loved to participate and learn more, and also the theme, I found it interesting. I wanted to be included on the inclusivity part. I'm here for the opportunities and the imperatives in transitioning into African green economies, so I felt I needed to participate. We are involved in community projects that we are currently doing. We are managing and training and raising awareness on environmental and social hazards that we are trying to buttress. So we are training young people and youth in our communities and helping them on reducing the impact of global warming and contributing to climate change and greening our economies by tree planting, managing waste and cleaning our environment.
We looked at different sources of raising financing that could help us to achieve climate adaptation and climate mitigation issues. And that was really informative and really helpful to know. But I still believe that there are some issues related to the side of spending, how we should be actually using all that money that we are collecting. How do we improve on the different sectors that we are spending on so that it can actually have the impact that we want? How do we prioritize what makes more sense to spend on in a given period before another sector? And I really hope, however much it was super helpful, that in future discussions and in future conferences like this one, we could have time to deep dive into those issues which are more on the spending side.
This event of this magnitude happening in our country, I loved to participate and learn more.
We looked at different sources of raising financing that could help us to achieve climate adaptation and climate mitigation issues.
Maintenant, merci beaucoup.
Merci, thank you, Makta, thank you. Good evening, well, good evening. Feels like good morning. I'm in another time zone. Welcome everyone to the session. Please take your seat as we are about to begin. Some of you may be wondering how Charles Murito has transformed into this lovely person. It's called AI, the power of AI. Charles Murito was supposed to be moderating this session, and due to the flights and there was a delay, so he called me last night and asked that I stand in for him, and he'll join us anytime. And if he joins us, when he joins us, I'll definitely let you see the original Charles Murito. And so as we begin, maybe to start us off, just a few guidelines on how we are going to take this session. So many of you know this is the side event for fostering prosperity through policies on artificial intelligence in Africa. And with me are these distinguished panelists. What we will do is have a quick intro. You've seen their titles here. We will be joined later by the Honorable Ndigumuzi Puti when she arrives. But as we begin, we are going to have one round of questions that the panelists will address, 4 to 5 minutes, and then we'll have another round 2 of questions, and they will go through them, and then we will open the floor up for discussion, and you can ask your questions, and those who are online can send their submissions to Maktar, who will be sharing. This session would really not have been possible without the ECA organizing it, the Commission on Technology making this possible. And Google has worked for a long time with the ECA. And it's through collaborations like this that we can really exchange information and find out what's happening. We know that we are on the cusp of something interesting and exciting with artificial intelligence, and it is not possible to work in silos. And that's why we need everyone to participate. We need people who are policymakers, we need technologists, we need leaders in the industry, so that we can exchange ideas, so we can collaborate, all for the benefit of our continent. And so I'm hoping that the discussions we have today will be really meaningful to help us chart a way forward for our continent and for Africa, and that we will end up with something that is really not only innovative, but also inclusive of every person on this continent. And so as we begin, I told the panelists, the distinguished panelists, that they are more than their roles and titles. And so I'll ask them to share what are they passionate about. So you get to know the person behind the title. And so I'll start with Dr. Sandra. What are you passionate about?
Thank you very much. I hope everyone can hear me. My name is Dr. Sandra Makumbirofa, and I'm a senior economist at Research ICT Africa. I am passionate about AI and digital policy research, the intersection of technology, industrial policy, digital policy, as well as, you can't hear me? The volume. This one. Okay. Is this better? Thank you. I was just explaining that my passion lies at the intersection of digital policy, economic policy, as well as industrial policy. Thank you.
Honorable Usman, you'll bear with me. The on and off, it takes a while, but I'll get there. What are you passionate about? Honorable Usman, yes.
Good morning, everybody. My passion has always been helping people since my childhood. I always like to see a smile on somebody's face, but on top of that, also I like to swim. So this is one of my hobby as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we pass the baton on to Fayaz King.
Thank you, Dorothy. Good morning, everybody. For me, it's about education. I started out way back of trying to connect every school to the internet. So there's some 7 million schools in the world. And during my tenure with UNICEF, we started the GIGA project in conjunction with the ITU, connecting schools to the internet. And how best to do it with AI. Connect every school to the internet, give every child an opportunity to learn, to level the playing field, to prepare today's children for tomorrow's future. So for me, it's all about children, educating them and connecting them all to the internet. Thank you.
Thank you, Fayaz King. And over to Baratang. What are you passionate about?
Morning, everyone. For me, it's about skills development and inclusiveness of women and girls in the tech space. So it started way back. As you can see, I'm the CEO of Girl Hive, and my work in the past 20 years has been empowering women and girls with their digital skills, teaching them how to code, getting them into jobs, and making sure that they become entrepreneurs in the space that they wouldn't normally be accepted in. And just the past 5 years, I've focused a lot on AI policy development and became a consultant in the space and literally pushing the policy that's inclusive in the G20 space.
Thanks, Baratang. Thank you. If you put that off, then they'll hear me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So you can see we are surrounded not just by experts, but people who are passionate about education, about helping, about swimming even. Yes. But it's really about community empowerment. And so the first question I'll direct to Mr. Usman Ba and ask you, how do you envision harnessing the transformative power of AI to revolutionize financial management and strategically optimize fiscal policies in the Gambia?
Thank you very much for, first of all, for inviting me on this panel. It is great to be here. Let me just start with this. AI been around for a long time. It's just the last maybe 10 years people start embracing it more than before. When it comes to artificial intelligence, there are several things it can do for our society. But particularly in the Gambia, as the Minister of Communication and Digital Economy was just established in 2022, June, we are at the very incubator stage in terms of artificial intelligence. But from a policy standpoint, or policy level, we always say it is important to make sure that you have the right regulation in place in regarding to the risk and challenges in AI, as AI is moving fast in terms of technology. But however, you cannot also stop AI benefits, and also to look at all the things that come with AI and say you would have to wait till the policy is in place, then you start working on AI. When it comes to financial inclusion in the Gambia, I can tell you that we are working on the policy framework on our 2024 to 2034 digital master plan. It is on the framework to develop this policy on AI and also introduce it into our university for our curriculum. This is where we are in terms of our AI in the Gambia. It's not that yet implemented as far as for our institutions, but we are working on the frameworks in terms of the financial inclusion and also looking at introducing it to our university's curriculum as well.
Thank you, Mr. Usman. I love the fact that you're saying, even though it's in the nascent stages, you're already thinking about a policy framework for financial inclusion and how to include it in the university. So it's work in progress. And I'm hoping that from the discussions we have here that you will have other partners to work with. Next question is for Mr. Fayaz King. How can governments, with your vast experience, how can governments and international stakeholders work towards implementing the recommendations outlined in the UN Secretary General's AI Advisory Body's interim report on governing AI for humanity? How do we ensure a closer alignment between international norms and the development and deployment of AI in the continent?
Again, thanks, Dorothy. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. The AI report on governing AI for humanity covers 6 guidelines and has 7 functions. It was issued in December this year as an interim report. There are comments and it's still open for commentary as up to end of March, where a final report will be issued in August for adoption at the Summit of the Future at UNGA, which is September 2024. So what is required here is a strategy for close alignment. And the close alignment, especially in the context of inclusivity, public interest, data governance, universal and network governance, as well as alignment with the UN Charter and human rights law. I think it's important that we look quickly at the guidelines and see what the guidelines are all about and how best member states currently are addressing these particular issues. The first guideline is on enhancing inclusivity of AI in development. And we see governments and international organizations the need to prioritize in adopting affirmative steps to bridge the digital divide by ensuring marginalized communities are involved and engaged. You need to ensure that women and girls are involved. We need to ensure that people with disabilities are involved. And we see great initiatives coming out of Rwanda, where there's a partnership with international telecommunications companies and other tech companies to enhance the AI literacy there. We also see South Africa also engaged in initiatives of enhancing and ensuring inclusivity in that particular space. The second guideline is about promoting AI within the public interest. This is so important, is that we put public interest over private gains. And this requires establishing binding norms and regulatory frameworks that ensure accountability of all entities that are involved in the AI space, especially throughout the full AI life cycle, from development to deployment to the actual use of AI. We see some great examples of member states such as Tunisia's National AI Lab, where government funds particular labs and AI labs for public interest and leverages the labs for public good. We also see a lot of integrating of different elements of AI being done by member states. The third element also, the third guideline that comes through very clearly in this report also is integrating AI governance and data governance. You cannot separate the two. You need to put in place protection for personal data and privacy, as well as security, to ensure that data is used for public interest. Data is critical and data needs to be used for public interest. We see great efforts being made by Kenya in data protection, the Data Protection Act in 2019. We also see Rwanda's Open Data Initiative, and we also see great lessons coming out of Singapore with the Data Trust Framework. The fourth item is the adopting of universal network approach to AI governance. This is crucial in that you need to establish a network of governance structure between new and existing structures. It cannot only be from existing structures. So you need a whole network of the best practices that need to be put together that take into account the cultural ideologies and the various stakeholders that are involved here. You have the private sector, you've got academia, you've also got civil service. We see great lessons coming out of the African Union high-level panel on emergency technologies, as well as the Partnership for AI. The final element that's covered in this report is about anchoring AI governance with international norms and agreements, such as the UN Charter, as well as the international human rights law. And this is so important, and no other institution than the UN can do this, and in particular the work that's taking place at UNECA, and that's why we're here today, to actually bring all these elements together. So the African Declaration on Internet Rights and Freedoms is a very good example, as well as research initiatives such as the deep learning Indaba coming out of South Africa. So what's important for us is to create these necessary strategies to ensure that all approaches to AI, from development, deployment to use, are within the interests of the public. In the effervescent realm of AI, the known, the unknown, and the unknowable is best addressed through governance with humanity at its center. For what AI giveth, AI also taketh. Thank you.
Thank you. How powerful. I like that, humanity at its center. And I don't think I'll do justice to what Mr. Fayaz King has said. All I can say is you must ensure that you read the report and read the 7 guidelines, because they're really powerful in guiding us as we shape the work that we are going to do for the future of Africa. But what I can say is that really this was what it's about. You've highlighted where is it working, which countries can we look to within the continent that are already doing the work we are talking about. You've talked about Rwanda when it comes to looking at alignment, South Africa, Tunisia, Kenya, UNECA that's hosting us today, and South Africa as well. So there's a lot that's happening in our countries, and we don't have to start from zero. We can just start collaborating, seeing where it's working, talking to people from the countries where it's working, and seeing how we can move forward together. And as Mr. Fayaz King has said, with humanity at the center of it all. Thank you so much. The next question is for Ms. Baratang. Baratang Mia, yes. How can governments effectively regulate and incentivize stakeholders across AI value chain that Mr. Fayaz King was talking about, with a specific focus on SMMEs that you lead as well, to foster innovation, promote equitable access to AI technologies?
Thank you. I think before I answer the question, someone just posted something and sent it to me, so I'm going to quote what that person said because it just relates to my answer. They are using Apple Vision Pro. I'm not sure if people know what Apple Vision Pro is, like those things that you use to watch TV or watch anything. And they said after using Apple Pro, they are more concerned about humanity than the device itself. So if you think now cell phones are making us antisocial, wait until Apple Vision Pro or these visionary things come into place. You won't be able to talk to anyone inside your house because it will take over the house. It's one of those things where the balance between what AI is bringing, what technology is bringing, and what humanity is, because humanity technically it's family, it's community, it's society. So to guide on that policy development, we should always maintain such principles that humanity must not disappear because technology has taken over. And governments can establish clear regulatory frameworks to ensure that ethical AI development and deployment happens. This can include guidelines for data privacy, security, transparency, and accountability in AI systems. Such regulations will help us build trust among users and prevent misuse of AI technologies. At the same time, there's push for growth in innovation, and me coming from innovation sector, I'm more in the innovation. In South Africa, there's a Startup Act, and I'm one of the people that's really pushing for the Startup Act to come so that innovation shouldn't be stifled by regulation. And at the same time, we need to think about digital inclusion, and I think that's where the government must drive, because the government is really an enabler, and it has to protect the citizens from what we as AI developers come with. Now, if you want to dig deeper into this trend of interplay between innovation momentum and digital inclusion, you need to think about what's AI. At the core of AI, to have a very performing AI systems, you need to have two critical components. One is capability, and capability comes from data. If the data that AI uses is accurate and is inclusive, the capability of the AI would be fine because we'll be solving real problems that are facing us. And at the other angle is to design this deployment, you need to be fair and transparent. Now, to uphold this, the inherent biases that's on the data at the moment, because data that's been collected and that's huge, it's based in the international databases. So we need to collect more as in African countries to have access to our own data. And I think government can facilitate that. Where by facilitating that, I mean with data democratization policy, where we have access to data as SMMEs to be able to build with data that's really speaking to Africa itself. And that also, a case for open data is that we are empowering citizens at the same time you encouraging innovation and efficiency. You're not using data that's inaccurate. And I can make an example with what India did with their DPI, or maybe I should say Togo. During COVID, the country used DPI to collect the data, and that accelerated the payment system, the inclusion of their society. And that's one of the things, because when you use DPI, you have the foundation that's needed for SMEs to function and be innovative inclusively. We have access to proper digital identity, which is something that the government should still control till this day. You can't have our identity just being taken over by Facebook. It should be with the government. We can't have our identity just floating. So that's something that if the DPI is there, it would be accurate. And you have the second thing that would be the data that the government collects. People trust the government more than we can trust any business trying to get our data. So the third thing is financial inclusion, which is the main thing that we need in Africa. That can only come by creating jobs, more skills through data analysis, and incentivize SMMEs to be able to create more AI platforms. So one way or the other, as the value chain is moving and innovation is happening, the government should empower us with infrastructure that has proper data, that has proper digital identity, and will be able to be financially inclusive.
Thank you, Ms. Baratang. I think the questions you raise, you're raising it at the right forum, which is how does government empower SMMEs to do what they want to do? But you're also saying that there's a thin line between this allowing innovation and therefore innovation not being impeded by regulation, but also not letting regulation not be there so that it's free. And that delicate balance is what governments must find. And so that we have ethical AI and we're able to build trust. I think you present this dichotomy very well, and it's a delicate one. And hopefully that's what we'll be able to do, facing the challenges head on in the continent. And over to you. I haven't forgotten you, Dr. Sandra. How can AI contribute or detract from African countries' public value creation, economic growth, resource mobilization, social compact, and economic redistribution? Research ICT does all the research, so tell us more.
Yes, so I would like to start by just acknowledging how pervasive artificial intelligence is. It's got undeniable transformative potential, and its capacity to bring efficiency, speed, and scalability has the potential to boost African economies. That's why we are particularly interested in it, and to make sure that we harness it for effective financial inclusions, employment creation, enhanced public service delivery, and to mitigate the effects of climate change that we're particularly already seeing in African countries. I want to talk about 3 points. on how AI can contribute to or detract from the core economic goals of African countries. The first one is the market concentration and the resulting inequalities. In our AI and economic justice work, the evidence shows that market concentration by big tech companies, primarily based in developed nations, has substantial implications for fair competition, for labor opportunities and creating decent work, for human rights, for taxation, as well as for economic redistribution. For example, UNACTAD found in their platform digital markets report that 90% of the market value of AI technologies is being realized in the US and China. This kind of dominance means that we need concerted efforts in global governance and global cooperation. We need to actively participate as African countries in global forums on AI, making sure that our African contexts are heard and our interests are represented. The EU is already making headway with this EU AI Act, challenging big tech companies. And the Competition Commission of South Africa last year published its remedies to curb anti-competitive behavior from big tech companies. For example, Google to stop the self-preferencing for their products over South African platforms, as well as platforms such as Booking.com to reduce, in actual fact, to stop their price parity practices. We believe at Research ICT Africa that efforts such as these provide regulatory guidance on creating a more conducive environment for African platforms to grow and succeed. The early adopters of big tech companies have a far much better advantage, and for us to make sure that AI technologies are developed here in Africa as well as technology transfer, we need to make sure that we are present at these global forums to discuss these things and our interests are represented. Second, the current evidence in Africa, just like Baratang noticed, is that there's inadequate, our database is inadequate for global policy making. And by this, what we mean is that the data that we have as African countries is not represented in the data that is used for training AI models. This means that the AI models that we are using here in Africa from foreign countries, they do not necessarily have the African context. And therefore, we're not able to use them efficiently as we can in African countries. For example, we have the AI and economic justice research that we are building evidence from different industries and countries in Africa. And we're trying to address what is the kind of integrated policy that would be efficient in terms of ensuring resource mobilization for taxation in Africa, for digital trade, for enhancing fair competition practices, inequality, innovation, as well as creating a regulatory environment that is applicable for our intellectual property, privacy, and liability regulations. We also have the Global Index on Responsible AI, which is collecting evidence in 140 countries across the world in terms of what the current governments are doing in terms of furthering responsible AI in the world. And the first set of this evidence will be released in June. This data is essential for strategic planning and implementation, as you can agree, as policymakers. And without this data, we're not able to improve our tax collection, for example, facilitating tax compliance, which AI technology can help us with. The copious amounts of data that is collected by our governments can be used if it's standardized and if it's of good quality, and it can be used to be able to form correct policies that are applicable for African countries. And then my last point is on the supply and demand side constraints that we face as African countries. I think we can all agree that we lack foundational infrastructure, especially in rural areas and remote areas in Africa. and the institutional capacity as well to enable AI technologies to benefit all citizens. This limited access to high-quality internet services presents a substantial hurdle for citizens. We've got a disparity from people who can't access the internet because perhaps they don't know how to use it, or they can't afford devices, or they can't afford the data prices. And there's also another section of those who can afford devices and the data costs, but they can't use it meaningfully because perhaps they don't have the right digital skills to use it for meaningful value. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we've got a few who actually have the digital skills, the AI developers who can use the infrastructure that we currently have to create AI technologies. Thank you. I will stop here.
Thank you, Dr. Sandra. You have alluded to quite a number of things. One is, first of all, we need to participate in all the fora, and as we are seeing here, very well represented. And thanks again to UNECA for making this possible and having these sort of sessions that help build capacity. You've also talked about the need for sufficient database, and in Africa we suffer because we are not represented. How do we create data that can be used to help Africa create its own database as well? And I think that's something that Baratang also talked about, Mr. Fayasking talked about. How do we build that database? And the other thing you've talked about is the need for infrastructure. If we're going to talk about inclusion, financial inclusion, there's a need for building the right skills so that citizens can understand that. And it's not just with the techies, but it's also with the citizens. And how do we build that structure that's needed for us to be able to implement and talk about responsible AI? But I think the main thing you talk about is we have insufficient data. So over to you all in terms of how do we make sure that data is accessible, not only to the SMMEs, but to the city, to help in planning so that AI can be used and harnessed for financial inclusion. We will now move to the second round, and the question is to you, Mr. Osman Ba. What proactive steps are under consideration to ensure the responsible and ethical deployment of AI in financial institutions, fostering trust and confidence among citizens?
Thank you very much. I think one of the most important things for trust and confidence building in terms of AI, first we have to look at Africa is in a better position than the rest of the global world in terms of AI, and here is why. Because we have seen what other countries have done in AI, we have seen the mistakes some of them have made, and we will be much prepared for our citizens and our government to do it right for the first time, looking at some of the countries that have already started AI in Africa. Now, sensitization is very important, one. Two, I think it is also important that most of these African countries, we are all at a different level in terms of AI. I think this is where I would tease my friend here from Smart Africa, maybe should build a platform that can mobilize AI for all 39 member states. The last time I looked at the data for AI, to have this confidence and trust in terms of accessing data and in terms of, we talked about digital inclusion and infrastructure. What is at stake is what are the benefits. Let's look at the benefits and how can we sensitize our citizens, the benefit overweight, the confidence they should have with government. Now, looking at Gambia, for example, I'll use Gambia as a perfect example. We have just passed our cybercrime bill and also our data protection bill at Cabinet, now tabled at National Assembly for ratification. So bringing these policies and these assuring citizens their data is safe by having this policy and regulation in place, and also inviting the young, the youths who can help sensitize the community, their parents, their uncles, and so on, how important it is to believe in AI at the same time, understand AI is a technology that help in many areas, and I will just list few of them, especially when it comes to agriculture. In 2022, the Gambia kids technology competed globally in the world, and they came out first in Africa. Gambia was given the award for the group that went for robotic competition in kids technology. They developed a robotic technology where they can help farmers for driveless trucks to weed their farms and also help them in harvesting their crops. So this kind of technology are very, very important in some part of Africa, because in Africa we do a lot of farming, and also medical in the healthcare sector is very important. If you look at now globally in Africa, how the health sector is booming, and it is important that we introduce AI to help our citizens in terms of driving the efficiency and the transparency in terms of medical technology. This is predictions, risk, and also looking at drug discovery, development, and virtual screening, all this in terms of healthcare and also education. As I mentioned earlier, in the Gambia, we are in the process developing these programs into our university. By 2025, we are hoping to roll out some of these AI programs in the Gambia. But going back to your question in terms of what can we do to make sure that citizens have the confidence and trust in AI, how can it help us? It has a lot to do with sensitization and also collaboration, which is very important. As I said, many countries are in different levels, and also the mobilization of resources is critical in getting this technology, developed, and also have the potential revolutionizing our government in terms of financial inclusion, which we discussed here a few minutes ago. AI in terms of sensitization, it is crucial that we collaborate, as I mentioned earlier, and we also work together and look at what other countries are doing, take the best practices. What might work for Europe may not work for Africa, but what might work for Africa also may not work for Europe. I think it is important that we understand these parameters when we go to the protection and sensitization and empowering people to use AI. At the same time, also to make sure that there are policies there that guide them to believe that government is here to help and develop this tool for the benefit of the society. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Osman. And I really echo you started with optimism, saying that for Africa, even though it's at the nascent stage, we can see what has worked and what hasn't worked. And therefore, we can take the best of what the world has to offer as we are drafting and looking for a collaborative AI policy framework. You've also talked about sensitization and collaboration going hand in hand. I like what you've done in the Gambia, which is using the youth, using the young people to be able to talk to the citizens, because we know the young people are way ahead than where most of us are, and they understand what AI can do. And I'm not just talking about generative AI that we know, but AI to help in agriculture, AI to help in healthcare, AI to help us improve what we do in our daily life. That's what we're talking about, and that will inspire confidence in the citizens, even as we think of financial inclusion. Thank you so much. Dr. Sandra Makumbirofa, now to you, what economic policy instruments are needed to ensure just AI African outcomes, a just AI African outcome? What policy instruments can we use?
Okay, thank you for that. In terms of economic policy, we must create enabling environment that is both risk mitigating and opportunity creating for AI adoption to be beneficial for all citizens. We should adopt a nuanced and context-specific approach to ensure that AI is developed and deployed in a way that benefits everyone, including the most vulnerable. And this requires building AI capacity in Africa through investments in public digital infrastructures, relevant education, and awareness of opportunities, like you just said, using the youth to be able to communicate to their families and whoever they're communicating with in terms of what opportunities are there with AI technologies and how we can use it in our productive capacities. There's also need to improve digital literacy and inclusive policies tailored to the unique socioeconomic and linguistic context of different African nations, just like Honorable Bar explained just now, that we've got different contexts in African countries. So it's up to each African country to make sure that the area policies that they come up with are context specific for them, but also relate to the AU continental strategies in terms of coordinating that regional coordination. We also need to make sure that our African data sets are available so that AI technologies are trained on our local context, and particularly that this data is made available to our local developers and our local researchers, so that there is technology transfer into the African space continent. Yes. Standards around data quality and representation are essential as well in terms of to eradicate discrimination against women and other compromised groups that occur in AI systems that are trained on bias because they don't have our local context. Then we should have data sovereignty policies in place to make sure that the information that is gathered from African countries will be processed in Africa, and AI capabilities can be built in Africa. We've seen a lot of investments in our African youth, those who managed to go abroad on scholarships to study data scientists and achieve all these skills that are needed. But usually we find that they don't come back to develop our continent. So we need to make sure that whenever we have investments into our African population, we make sure that we incentivize the people to come back and work for our continent. And then we also welcome, like you just said, efforts such as these, where we have a forum for Africans to come and discuss what are the challenges that we are facing in our communities, as well as what policies we need to put up in terms of regional coordination. Like I said before, actively participate in global governance efforts and making sure that we're represented and considered to take into account our unique needs and context in this region. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sandra. And I'll just echo what you're talking about. I think that has been a very consistent drumbeat, the idea of data protection, and that even if countries are working to develop their own policy framework, that it is important that they also lean on the regional, what AU is doing. So you're not developing your policies in silos, but rather looking at what the AU is doing and making sure that you're integrating what the AU is doing in your policies. I think that's an important thing, the idea of collaboration. You also talk about the importance of removing biases. So that means inclusivity for all, women, those who are challenged in any way, having this data that is inclusive, and the idea of digital literacy, because citizens need to understand, what does data governance mean? What does this mean? And so I think it is incumbent upon you, leaders, policymakers, to make sure that you're educating the citizens on what data means and the use of that data. And then, as Baratang said, making that data accessible to SMEs to be able to do what they're doing. Just on a side note, I was talking to Mr. Honorable Osman Ba, and he was saying he had studied in the US for 30 years, over 30 years, and decided one of the things that got him back was to come back to the Gambia and give, to just help develop his country. And I think we see more and more people who have studied out but want to come back to Africa, Africans who are out and want to build, the continent, want to build their continent and their countries. And then just making sure that we use the youth and we include the youth in what we do, because they can be wonderful ambassadors in helping other people understand what AI is all about. And with that, I'd like to open up to the floor for any question. Please introduce yourself, where you're from, and then ask your question. And Maktar, you will also be taking the questions online. Is that it? Okay. Bon, les questions vont suivre. Donc, si vous avez des questions, vous pouvez juste lever la main et puis dites votre nom, d'où vous venez, etc. Et puis posez la question. Pour ceux qui sont en ligne, la même chose. Et Maktar va vous représenter. C'est ça? On est bien? Okay. So let's go. We start? There's a hand that has been raised for a long time.
Hi, good morning. My name is Paul Tangata. I work for Grab in Nairobi. This is not a question, actually, but AI requires data. Dr. Sandra has mentioned that. We need lots of data to put onto that system. In my job, there are times I have had to buy data, African data, from US corporations. I had to buy African data to use in my job from US corporations, and that's the danger. I am pro-AI because I know how to use it in my job. What we need to do now is ECA tries to do a research, a study, a quick study for all the countries. Why do we need AI? What are we going to use it for? Are we ready to use AI? Are there some tools that can do the same job as AI? We are at a different level from Europe and America. I wouldn't be happy to see 20 years from now, my kids buying data from their own country, from the US. Professor in France said he was in the US. You know very well that your address only, a bank can use it to make money. Just your address and your name, that's enough. So I just want us to be cautious. AI is good. Let's first of all evaluate what we are going to use it for in the country. I'm pro-AI, and I know how to use it. Let's make sure that everybody is aware of what AI can do. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that challenge. And question, challenge, observation. I saw Maxa taking notes because UNECA is busy leading with that. And I'll hand over to Fires King to take it.
Great, no, thanks. The issue on data is extremely important, but I think we need to frame it and put it in perspective. Let me share with you some facts and some statistics. 92% of the data of the European Union is held in servers outside the EU, and those servers are in the United States. That won't change too soon. Now, if you want to consider the amount of African data that's held in servers outside Africa, if that's the number for Europe, I can't share with you a stat for Africa, but I can assure you it's a large amount of data. Now, the way that is managed, it's by putting in place proper regulation. And the EU is very strong with the tech companies, the big tech companies, when it comes to data usage and data privacy. So again, the UN can help in this particular aspect. The AU has put in place or is working on some regulation on ethical use of data. For individual countries to go and negotiate on data on their own doesn't work. It needs a concerted effort, a joint effort led by the AU, supported by UNECA, supported by UN institutions to come up and to put in place an ethical use of AI and use of data and data privacy. Having said that, there's also critical data, data that's so important for governments to function. It needs national policies around data so that that data is shared within the boundaries or within the countries themselves, so that that data can inform on particular decisions and what is used. If for the past 400 years we've been able to share meteorological data across boundaries, across borders with ease, surely we can develop and come up with the necessary regulation and frameworks to share data that is critical for the success of any member state in whatever endeavors they take in both planning and implementation and deployment of AI. So data is important, we hear you, but it needs to be done with the right framework, the right ethical policies being put in place, and it needs to be done collectively. Thank you.
Thank you so much for asking. I think you've summarized it well. It needs to be done well and needs to be done collaboratively. I'm also going to pass, I've got Honorable Usman, who wanted to share something that he's done in the Gambia, and then I'll hand over to Ms. Baratang.
Thank you very much, my brother, for that comment. I think it starts first with the leadership. When we talk about data, accessing of data, the silo data we have in Africa, when I came to the ministry, we were in the process of revising our IC Act. Most of these acts are done by consultants. And they come, they write, they give it to you. Most time you don't know what is in it. You don't have. They do all this workshop. But one thing is important, that every minister that is here within the continent of Africa to look at and consider that all data within your country should stay in your country, especially for government data. And that was one clause I didn't see in that IC Act. Then I said, if the infrastructure is here, we have a data in this country, no data should be hosted out of the Gambia. And that's a must, including the citizen data as well. And the question and the challenge that was thrown to me was, what happened with if other companies outside of the Gambia, Europe, or US want to invest and they want their data to be hosted outside? I say that is a fantastic question. However, they can advise the consultant and recommend, but at the same time, we have to do what works for us in this country. So there should be a process that they have to go through and certified in order to host that data out of the country. That process has to be in place. So when it comes to this data, the first priority is come from the leadership. You have to have, just like he mentioned, the policy and regulation that would give you and enables you to have that data within your country. I think is very important. As I said again, it starts from the leadership. Thank you.
And I think what Fayaz also said is making sure that you're not just doing it in silo as the Gambia, but working with what AU is doing and UNECA is doing so that there's more collaboration. Ms. Baratang, you had a point.
I'm not going to repeat what they said because I was going to say the same thing that the minister, but I just want to add something. I visited a data center in Brazil by an invite. And when I got there, I realized maybe that's why we don't have a data center, a big data center in South Africa. And I'll tell you why. We're still struggling with electricity. If you do not have proper infrastructure, electricity, forget about data center and cloud systems. Now, that's where we need to start as Africans. We don't have lights on the streets. We're still having 8 hours of a day with no electricity. And I'm not bashing my country here. We're doing well with having nice data sets and all that, but to host proper data of a country, you need good cloud infrastructure. You need good engineers. You need skills. We're still depending on international engineers. We don't have our own, like, I know that most of the biggest engineers in South Africa come from India. Globally, most of the biggest engineers. And so we need quantum computing. So we need to skill our people to be able to build the amount of, the biggest data in the world now, 80% of it was produced in the last 2 years. Now imagine what's going to happen in the next 5 years. And where are those engineers coming from? So when we talk about data and the infrastructure, and I like the fact that you said it's not a question, it's a thing that we as Africans need to think about. Skilling our own people to be able to build these cloud systems and build infrastructure. The government invest in us as SMMEs to be able to, even if we build data commons, small data sets, but they should come together and create these big platforms that speaks to Africa in terms of our native languages. They are being diminished by French and English. We're sitting here listening to French and English. Nobody knows Swahili is one of the biggest African languages. But that's going to disappear if we don't create this infrastructure. And it's very important to start with the basics, which is electricity. And when I visited this data center, I knew that Cape Town as a whole, the electricity that we need to be supplied was hosted by that one data center. Now, it's a big amount of electricity that you need to host data, and I'm going to leave it there.
Asante sana. Sasa nitazungumza Kiswahili kwa sababu wamesema tunazungumza Kifaransa na Kiingereza. Hajasikia Swahili, sasa nimebadilika. No. The challenge is taken. Why isn't there any Swahili translation? We're in Africa. Okay. Thank you so much for your passionate contribution. As you've heard from the clapping from the audience, you've just said what needs to be said. But talking on infrastructure, you know, while we can be on this bandwagon talking about AI, if we do not have the infrastructure in place, then we cannot even have the discussion. So we really need to work on our infrastructure, all sorts of infrastructure, to make this happen. Thank you so much. Asante sana. So, online, is there anyone? There's a question here. There's a question. Do we have any online? I don't want those who are online to feel, no, okay.
Dr. Hubert Danso, CEO and Chairman, Africa Investor. Congratulations, a very interesting panel. I'm from the investment community, and we are very interested to understand, instead of trying to look at how the world is influencing us through AI, you know, if we look at the African Continental Free Trade Area, we developed that because we had intra-African trade levels of 16%. Now, we have intra-African investment levels of less than that, which are about 6%. So we're not investing enough amongst ourselves. A lot of the explanation is that we don't really understand enough about each other's economies. If we now look at the conversation that took place yesterday on investment, we are arguing that the ratings agencies are biased towards us. So I think, how can we use artificial intelligence to generate data that changes the investment narrative as a policy? So we have a policy that generates artificial intelligence-oriented data that puts the African position to the algorithms around the world that will be assessing us, to the credit rating agencies. My question is this something that the African Union, perhaps ECA, can generate? Our own response, our own narrative through artificial intelligence, taking out the bias, it can influence global capital markets and then also stimulate intra-African investment. And then I'll just quickly end by asking, you know, one of the key issues that we hear is that by the end of the century, we're going to have 50% of the world's workforce. And of course, from the private sector, that's what we really want. But the reality is we're seeing universal basic income being explored in the US, across Europe, in recognition of humanoids and autonomous work. And economies are going to really drive more artificial intelligence to produce, to industrialize. So we know that we have this youth bold, which could be a dividend, but are we also planning and looking at a plan B that perhaps we might have a little bit of a liability, and are we going to be looking at universal basic income or an alternative to be able to survive and compete globally in that context? Thank you.
You didn't introduce yourself. Sorry. And yeah.
Dr. Hubert Danso, Chairman, Africa Investor.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Right. So, Mr. Baratang will answer, and then Dr. Sandra, who does research ICT, and yeah, okay.
For me, it's just that I have a different opinion from you. I personally think investors are very biased. It doesn't matter what ECA is going to do. They can write 5,000 documents and say involve black women. Those investors don't give a damn about the black woman. So it's up to you and us, the people in the startup ecosystem, to change and start investing on ideas that comes from Africa. It doesn't matter what the government and ECA is going to do. Nobody's going to force the unbiasedness that exists in the industry for investments towards Africa. It doesn't make money for them, and they don't give a damn.
Wow, and it's that plain simple. Yeah, right. Okay, it's getting hot. Dr. Sandra, who does a lot of research.
Thank you. I think my response to that is that I think, and I hate to keep saying this, data is very important, and it's very important for us, for our data to be represented in the training models. And what this does is it's able to show each country's context in terms of its ratings and how the economies function. For example, we saw with the mobile money uptake in Africa, it was very big, especially with the introduction of M-Pesa. We found that we can now use mobile money in so many different African countries. And one of the biggest hurdles was partly due to the inefficient banking systems, as such that, for example, you would need proper documentation to open a bank account, IDs, something that a lot of Africans struggle with. Some don't have, are not identified in the system. So if you don't have a formal identification, it's really hard for you to transact and to bank. So mobile money was quite useful. And we've seen that when you look at the local context and local problems and you develop solutions from there, then you can see an uptake in resources. And I think this is what we need to do with AI technologies. We need to make sure that we see what we want, the kind of problems that we want AI to solve for us, and rather than having it tell us what kind of solutions they want to bring. Yeah. Thanks.
Mr. Fayasking had something to add.
I think as an investor, the first and foremost consideration to look at is the number of AI startups that you do have in Africa that exist already, that are really struggling to find funding and to find the investment. The investment or the money goes to startups in other countries and other geographies, whereas our own local startups who have the ideas, who have the concepts, who use the local data, who've been able to take unstructured data, put it in structured formats, and are actually struggling to find this investment and attractiveness that's there. So I think there needs to be a mindset shift, a significant mindset shift, and look at the actual investing startups in the AI space that exist in Africa. That's the first thing. The second thing is the need for collaboration. This is a case where all parties, governments, civil society, private sector, and the citizenry need to get together to rally behind and look at those items that make sense for them. So there's the need to prioritize. If we look at AI in agriculture, significant amount of works, very quick gains that can be done there. in education, again, quick gains, low-hanging fruit, again, a lot of work that can be done in there. So in those particular areas, there are huge opportunities. But again, I need to emphasize the need for collaboration. I also need to emphasize the need to put in place frameworks that make sense, frameworks that are meaningful to all parties so that it works. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I was going to talk about, this investment in AI startups. I think that's something that we also do at Google, which is looking in Africa and looking at what are the startups. And not only, and Baratang, you'll be really happy, it's not only just startups, AI startups, but that are also women-led, because we want to see women invest in the women leaders and make sure that there's a proportionate number of women leaders. Thank you. I've got two questions online. One is from Harusi Sanusi from Nigeria, and panelists, any of you can take this. The question is, how can I help the Nigerian people with the issue of insecurity with AI? How can I use AI to help with insecurity in Nigeria? Any takers?
I'm gonna try. Will it not be awareness and skills training? I think when you start making people aware that, you know what, AI is so positive, and I use AI daily in my life. Like, before I write anything, I consult. My life lives in the AI space, and I think the people that are not using it are missing out. And if you run a company these days and you're not using AI, you're screwed. So it's one of those things that people need to be conscientized.
In the politically correct sense, you're really messed up. Okay.
Yeah, I think we just need to make people aware of what are the positives of AI, and education is the only key to doing that. Maybe UNECA can invest in us in terms of capacity building, because that's what we do capacity building. And the person who asked the question can partner and reach out to UNECA to do capacity building of what AI is and what are the benefits. And the low-hanging fruits, like Dr. Faiz-King was saying, anybody can develop something in the AI space. So maybe we should.
Thank you so much, Ms. Baratang, and for being so down to earth about it. Yeah, right, Mr. Faiz-King.
I think the key word here is capacity building. And capacity building takes place in 3 tiers. The first tier is your legislative and political tier. So you need to build capacity within your parliament, within your ministers, within your government offices, so that they understand what it is they're regulating. They understand what it is the benefits are, what is known, unknown, and what is unknowable. So if you're going to build that sense of security, the first one starts with that tier. The second tier that you have to build the capacity in is that of the actual data scientists, the researchers, the purveyors of AI, so that you have the skill set to analyze the data, analyze the information, make informed decisions, and prepare data for that first level, for the political framework and for the administrative framework. And then the final and very important layer is that of the people. You need to build capacity in the people. It's no good having AI, having the infrastructure, having all these facilities, if the people themselves don't use them. So the key here is to convince or to work with the people to move from standing in line to going online to get services. So security comes by working on these 3 layers, with the common denominator being capacity building, from inline to online. Thank you.
Thank you, and that's really perfect. Thank you, Mr. Faiz-King. The other question is from Azinwin Tentu. I think it's related, and maybe I'll pass this to you, Honorable Osman. There's a certain fear of AI from what I'm seeing. I am of the same school like Ms. Baratang. AI is really what helps you be creative and collaborative. But this person is asking, let us talk about the dark side of AI. Ooh. what's the negative part of it? What do we say?
Thank you very much. I think whenever you talk about AI, there's always that fear of what we call disinformation, misinformation out there. And the data is from AI is as good as the data you input in the AI application or platform. So to take this fear out from, again, earlier we discussed a little bit about this, is in terms of cybersecurity. How can we take this fear out from those that constantly have this resistance, of AI? I think one of the, he touched a little bit about it, is the sensitization is definitely one, and involving the civil society, and also looking at how these sensitizations could be rolled out, like we talked about earlier about the youth, which is very important. But having a very, very strong cybersecurity in our community, in our government, is very important in terms of looking at the risk on fear of AI. What can AI do? Because a lot of times you see a lot of stuff in social media in terms of videos, I mean, you name it, audio, how credible this information is. How can you trust where the source of this information is? There should be, we discussed this earlier also, there should be a platform where, in the US we call it fact check, where you can go and source this information and see how reliable this information is. Where does it come from? I think these platforms need to also be established when it comes to AI. Where can you go to look at the source of information that is being put out there? It was not too long ago, I see something about the US president said that he lost the election of 2022, and everybody believed that. Everybody is saying, oh yes, he lost, but that was what we call, again, this information and misinformation, which is absolutely wrong. But where do you go to validate this data? I think those platforms are critical in the AI ecosystem. The most important part, again, building this cybersecurity layers to make people, citizens, believe that they are protected when it comes to AI in terms of how they use it and how relevant this information they are looking at is critical. So that's my 2 cents of my contribution to the fear of AI, because everybody, to be honest, even us sitting in this room, there's still people who are skeptical about AI. Can I get into it, and how could I use it? How credible this information is? Should I input this into my data application or not? So that's there, but we have to continue to work on educating people on the fear and how we can mitigate the risk of that fear.
Thank you, Honorable Osman. Dr. Sandra, fear of AI, the darker side of AI.
Thank you. So at Research ICT Africa, I forgot to mention, but we are an African digital policy think tank for regulation, as well as tracking and monitoring developments in the digital policy space in Africa. And the value addition we really bring is increasing evidence from African countries in terms of what's on the ground. And in relation to harms, we've got specific projects that we work on in terms of looking at misinformation, like you spoke about, and I would like to speak about harms that come with AI technologies in terms of liabilities. The current regulations that we have in Africa right now, they don't have clear guidelines on how to deal with the situation where you have an AI technology which malfunctions. Who is responsible for that malfunction? Is it the developer of the AI technology? Is it the owner of the AI technology? Or is it the user of the AI technology? So those are some of the harms and things that we have to deal with when situations arise. And I think that regulation and clear guidelines on how to deal with those kind of instances are needed to protect citizens when such harms happen.
Right, and I guess that would also be part of the policy framework as we are developing an AI policy framework. Tied into this, Cairo, who's a lecturer from University of Washington, he says, thank you to the panelists for the great inputs. My theory is that governments fail to invest in AI because they do not see the connection between AI and revenue for the government. What is the take of the panelists on this? AI revenue generation. Fayaz King, do you want to start us off?
I think one of the great things about AI is transparency. It's a balanced scorecard, it's real time, it's information that's available. It gets all data in one place. It allows everybody to see the same picture. So for me, it's a unique opportunity for improving revenue, not only revenue, but improving government services for the citizens. It's a unique opportunity to do this so that not only is it from the revenue side, but actually from the service side and service delivery, because it brings transparency to everything. I'll give you a very simple example. When we started the Giga project of connecting every school to the internet, you can tell which schools are connected to the internet every 4 hours because Project Connect updates all the time. The second layer we wanted to put on, or will put on in future there, will be to look and to say what is being downloaded and what is being uploaded by students. Then the third layer you'll probably be able to put there is to actually match those results with the actual performance of students in classes per se. So it brings a lot of transparency. So if you were a teacher or you were a minister of education, this is something you would support. Now imagine if you took that same thing and applied it to revenue and government revenue. Fantastic results. So AI is the way to go. It works both ways. Thank you.
Right. Yes, please go ahead, Honorable Osman.
Thank you very much. I think this is a great question. When they talk about revenue generation in terms of AI in government, economics 101, if you cannot increase revenue, you cut costs. So it really helps government to cut costs. If you look at perfect example, if you apply for visa, especially e-visa, or some of these services, ID card, so forth, the time it'll take for you to upload your document, the time you get the result back to get these services approved and mailed to you, or you come and collect it, it's very lengthy process in Africa in general. A lot of African governments have this legacy system that take forever to process their services. So when you have an AI that can streamline this process, reduce redundancy, it's saving government money. So when it's saving government money, that's basically in return is a revenue generation. I think that's how I look at it in terms of revenue generations. The other thing is speed. Speed is very important. We know a lot of governments in Africa's speed is a challenge. Everything take hours and hours to process to get results. So when you have AI application to provide you these result at a very short time, that also save money to government. So that's how we should look at it. It's not just on the revenue aspect, but also on the redundancy and speed and efficiency that it also creates for government. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Osman. Those are really practical ways. Yes, there's a question. Yes, we'll let Ms. Baratang add, and then we'll give you the mic. Please give him the mic. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
She's going to sort of add to the point, and then you can ask your question. So I wanted her to wind off this generation of incomes.
Just to agree with the person who raised the question, it's my opinion also that governments don't understand the value chain of AI, hence they can't really quickly invest in it. But I have another viewpoint to say. African governments were faced with two challenges. One is the infrastructure. We still have to really build a good infrastructure for digital inclusion. And when you are faced with building the infrastructure that changes all the time, and at the same time invest in SMMEs, you have to choose. Either you go with SMMEs because they create jobs, they change, then you don't take the responsibility of job creation and improving the economy. You're leaving it with the investors and the SMMEs. Or you do it yourself as the government, and our governments are faced with votes and they want to tell our people that we did this, we did this, we did this, so they want to do it themselves. I think for me is when governments start realizing that tech develops super fast, you need skills, and we need to invest in the SMMEs to take the burden away from them, then it would be easier for them to invest. And the key word is what Dr. Faiz-King said, which is collaboration. As Africans, we don't have certain equipments that are needed and the tools that we need to elevate and accelerate super fast. So for a small Baratan to partner with Google and the government to endorse that, it would be a quicker way to accelerate African development, especially in AI, because today we speak in this, generative AI is changing every day. Now they're speaking about AI 6, where it will sense my things and read my brain. And so when then we tell African government, think about humanity first, think about alignment, when they're still the people are still saying, I don't have internet. So we're talking the different language from the Western countries. In Europe, they have the infrastructure. So when they were worried about investing in AI, they didn't have the burden of infrastructure.
So the importance of infrastructure, even as we begin the discussions. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really want to appreciate the contribution of the panelists. It's really wonderful and it's engaging. And I think one of the biggest problems about AI is that most people don't know about AI. They just hear about AI, but they don't know it really, what it means. And I think one of the drawback of the AI, which maybe has not been mentioned, is that AI depends on data. If the data is not good, what we get out is not good. So, and that's why the emphasis on data is very, very important. And here we are talking about accurate data that we could use. The issue that have been mentioned about infrastructure is very, very important. And when you talk about infrastructure, the case of Rwanda started with infrastructure, actually working with ECA, the broadband infrastructure, digging across the whole country. And we did it with Korea Telecom because at that point, the country could not get resources from the IMF and World Bank because they didn't think that this was very important. But it happened. In some countries, there are bigger countries where you cannot dig all over the place, where you combine the broadband, undersea cable, with satellite, especially in the rural areas. But the point that they are making, which is very important, and I think it's for us to take home, is that how to combine it with electricity, with energy. And in some countries, including Rwanda, I know that they go hand in hand. You roll out the energy on the grid and also off-grid. Off-grid use the solar, use mini hydro, micro hydro, but we make sure that as you go to many schools as possible, then that's when you can roll out also the technology infrastructure, and then you start doing business for other things. But I think that was the most important. And the take home here for us is that we really, this time, although we have been planning it, to work with UNICEF, to work with ITU,
to work with the Tech Envoy to roll out the Giga initiative that you have talked about for a long time. Coming up with a plan, mobilizing resources, and see how we can roll it out in a clear way that everybody understands what is happening where on the African continent. Because out of 1.6 billion people who are not connected, Africa really is one of the biggest places where we are not connected. And if you are not connected, you cannot even talk about AI. You cannot talk about anything else. The reason why you are saying that all of you, all the wonderful things, is because you are all connected. And that way then it's, but we need that kind of infrastructure, and we need energy investment going hand in hand with the IT infrastructure that also will make all these wonderful things available. At the ECA, we are investing very heavily on data because we have the Africa Center for Statistics. But the statistics have been more of the traditional areas. And now we are bringing in technology, we are bringing in climate data so that you can all get the same information in one place. Of course, it's building block. It's not something that you fix in one time, just at one time. But this is one of the priority areas because technology is going to drive development going forward. And this is going to become very, very important. The last one, which I think is also a lesson for us as ECA, is these are wonderful innovations that are happening. But how do we share these innovations so that one country doesn't have to start all over again? You can replicate some of the innovations which you think can work. There are some innovations. Here I just met with my countrymate, someone called Emmanuel Nkurunziza, who actually was heading our land center. And at that point, we digitized the whole land in the country because we are getting issues. The president was getting issues from all the citizens about land. I'm sure in your own countries, you know the issues about land. So when it was digitized, everybody knows which land belongs to who, which land is changing hands. We did it with the support of the UK government, and they brought people to study how this has become successful so it can help them in the UK. Because it has solved a lot of problems, and everybody, just with your smartphone, you can always see almost anything that has to do with land. It solved almost all the problems. And this is applicable to many countries. When I was the governor of the central bank, I worked with Professor Njuguna Ndungu when we had of course, the technology. They had M-Pesa, and then we all agreed as 4 governors, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, and Kenya, to say, how do we bring in, how do we use this technology for the financial inclusion? That's when we all started bringing in the Finiscope surveys that were helping us in terms of financial inclusion, introducing the core banking systems that were really standard and all that, and it helped in terms of really having a very, very huge impact. So some of these innovations are very, very important. I think what we are going to do as an assignment for us in ECA is to see how we can compile all these innovations, those in health, those in agriculture, those in different sectors, so that we can actually bring them forward so that they can be shared with as many countries as possible to be able to roll out. And we can work with them in terms of seeing what resources are necessary for us to be able to roll them out and share. I think that's the quickest way that we can be able to leapfrog, rather than each country having their own, another country their own, and nobody knows what the other one is doing. Sharing experience is one way of relearning very fast. For Rwanda, as a country that had a genocide, after that had nothing, the only way of surviving was to learn from each other. We sent people in Botswana to learn about governance, sent people in Senegal on decentralization. I personally led a delegation to Tanzania on public financial management system, others on revenue collection, we sent them to Uganda and so many other countries. So it was a learning experience. Then after that, whatever we did in Rwanda that was successful, other countries also came to learn from us. So these are good examples of where you can fast track your development by just learning from these kind of innovations, which you all know, but are not replicated in many other countries. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. And find what a fitting way to actually end this, because you have talked about the importance of shared experiences and learning from one another, and you've given solid examples of what you've done. We truly appreciate as well the vision that you have in terms of leading ECA and what we can do, and I think there are lessons to learn from that. I want to reiterate, I think what has been shared today, and really, I think a round of applause to these panelists who have been amazing, bringing their knowledge, their shared experiences to make this discussion enriching. I want to thank those who've been online, Cairo, Azinwin, Harisu, who've shared your questions to help push this discussion. Those of you who've asked questions on the floor to ensure that we have a really engaging moment for us. So thank you so much. I think the running call is that we need to collaborate more. We need to exchange, and that has been shared. We need to exchange information. We need to build infrastructure. We cannot talk about AI if we do not have infrastructure and build for our people. And that financial inclusion is possible if we work together. So I feel if we go on having these discussions, then we'll be able to have a unified approach for Africa. And this means that we will work with AU, we will work with UNECA. Thank you, the UNECA team, for the work that you're doing in spearheading this collaboration and helping develop a comprehensive AI policy framework. If you haven't read what Mr. Fayaz King shared, the 7 guidelines, please make sure you land your hands on that report, because I think that they will help as you build your policy framework. So thank you so much. I think that we need to work together. We cannot work in silos. And I see the real Murito is in the house. So please allow me to just give him the mic, because I was standing in for him, and he really had big plans for this. So Charles, would someone give them a mic to Charles? Charles, I told them this was AI that had transformed you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies. I think we're still morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, executive secretaries, ministers, honorable members. It's an absolute pleasure to be here this morning. It's fantastic. I was supposed to be on that panel, but it's fantastic. The even more capable Dorothy Oko, as you've seen, did a phenomenal job. For me, I think just one quick point to iterate is that you've heard about infrastructure, which is critical. You've heard about collaboration between private sector, government, and academia to be able to deliver the right policies, because all of the things that you are talking about, for instance, around infrastructure, if you don't have the right policies around right of way, critical infrastructure, having all of those, then we cannot be able to drive this. But I want to talk about one thing which hopefully it wasn't mentioned, is AI for social good. Because we talk about all of these other things, but when it comes to social good, AI is absolutely critical. When it comes to food security, the ability to do locust forecasting and how we can be able to prevent locusts from multiplying. When it comes to emergency services, for instance, earthquakes and flood forecasting. When it comes to maternal health, how we can be able to use mobile phones to be able to serve as ultrasounds for all the millions of women who do not have access to ultrasounds on the continent. It's absolutely critical. So there's so much good that AI can be able to deliver. There's certainly challenges, and you heard about those, but if we can be able to collaborate together, I think we're all going to win as one Africa, especially now that we have the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which will make this one single market. We need to move away from being nationalistic and be Africanist. And I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Charles. And maybe starting from Ms. Baratan, just one word as we wind up, one sentence, and then we can go for lunch.
One word is investment. I think government should invest in SMMEs for us to build AI, even if it's AI for good. I just built an AI for good platform called Devs Hired to bring up skills. Most Africans know how to build platforms. They did not go to have degrees in universities, and we need to accredit them. And our platform does that for them to be recognized. So investment.
Thank you. Investment. Fayaz King.
Just by way of an acronym, what AI giveth, AI also taketh away. Thank you.
I love that. What AI giveth, AI taketh away, and that's why humanity has to be at the center. That's what you said.
I think for me it's about leadership. We have to encourage our leaders to embrace AI, just like he said earlier. Many people don't know about AI, they just hear AI. So the more sensitization we do for our leaders to understand the benefit of AI, the better we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Leadership, investment in leadership. UNECA, you can see where your role is, helping our leaders understand AI. Dr. Sandra.
Thank you. For me, I think it is active participation from African policymakers in the global forums as we're discussing AI policies, how to challenge big tech companies, etc. So definitely AI, but definitely active participation.
Active participation, and that's what you've all done today. And I want to thank you all for being part of this session. Thank you very much. Have a great lunch. Please don't leave. You stay, you stay, you stay.